A U-boat captain stares at his depth gauge. He's done everything right. Silent running, deep dive, no wake, no noise, no way for the enemy above to know exactly where he is hiding in the black water. And then the ocean explodes around him anyway, not from above, not from behind, but from in front of where he thought he was safe. No warning splash, no countdown, just sudden, total destruction. For years, German U-boat crews had one rule drilled into their bones. If you can't hear the depth charges falling, you're safe. That rule just got them all killed. So what changed? What did the British invent that broke the one law of submarine warfare every German sailor swore by? Picture the North Atlantic in the winter of 1941. Grey water, grey sky, waves tall enough to swallow a ship whole. Down below the surface, a German U-boat commander is doing the math that keeps every submariner alive. How deep, how fast, how quiet. He's heard the stories. British depth charges roll off the stern, sink and detonate. You hear the splash, you hear the click of the pistol. You have seconds to dive and turn before the shockwave arrives. It's terrifying, but it's predictable. And predictable things can be survived. This is the story of the weapon that made predictable obsolete. A strange, spiky contraption the British called the Hedgehog, and the German crews who never truly understood how it was killing them until it was far too late. By the end, you'll see exactly why this odd-looking device quietly turned the tide of the Battle of the Atlantic. To understand why the Hedgehog was so devastating, you first have to understand why the depth charge, Britain's main U-boat weapon early in the war, was, frankly, a blunt instrument. A depth charge is basically a barrel of explosives with a timer. Escort ships would get a sonar contact, steam toward it, and roll charges off the back of the ship as they passed overhead. The problem is built into the geometry. By the time the ship is directly above the submarine, sonar contact is lost. The ship's own hull blocks the sound waves. So the crew is essentially guessing where the U-boat has moved to in those final seconds. Worse, the charges take time to sink to depth, and a smart U-boat commander uses that time to change course and dive harder. The numbers tell the real story. Across the war, British forces carried out over 5,000 depth charge attacks and only managed a kill ratio of roughly 60-1, meaning it took about 60 attacks, on average, to sink a single U-boat. That's an enormous amount of explosives, fuel and time spent for one kill. German commanders learned to respect the depth charge, but they also learned to survive it. They knew when it was coming. They knew, roughly, how long they had. Submarine warfare, at its core, is a game of information. Who knows where the other guy is and who has to guess? And for the first 2 years of the U-boat campaign, the U-boats had the edge in that game far more often than the Allies wanted to admit. That's where the British Admiralty's oddest department comes in. A small, secretive engineering unit called the Directorate of Miscellaneous Weapons Development. Nicknamed the Wheezers and Dodgers, this group wasn't made up of career naval officers. It was scientists, tinkerers and problem solvers pulled together specifically because the regular Royal Navy establishment kept telling them their ideas were impossible. Leading them was a chemist named Sir Charles Goodeve, a man with zero patience for "that's not how we've always done it." And in 1941, Goodeve's team set out to solve one very specific problem. How do you attack a submarine without losing sonar contact in the final crucial seconds? Their first attempt, a device called the Fairley mortar, was tested aboard HMS Whitehall and quietly failed. But it proved the underlying idea was sound. Instead of dropping charges off the stern after losing the target, what if you fired them forward, ahead of the ship, while sonar contact was still locked on? The ship never has to pass over the submarine at all. It can stay back, keep listening, and launch its attack while it still knows exactly where the enemy is. It sounds almost too simple. But here's the thing. Building it turned out to be a nightmare of small, stubborn engineering problems, each one nearly enough to kill the whole project. The team needed a fuse that would survive smashing into the ocean at speed without detonating from the impact of the water itself, but would detonate on contact with a hard steel hull. They needed a warhead shaped so it would sink straight down instead of tumbling sideways once it hit the surface. And they needed a firing pattern wide enough to actually have a chance of hitting something the size of a U-boat without wasting every single bomb in the process. The final design used 24 individual mortar bombs, each one 7.2 inches wide and weighing 65 pounds, packed with a Torpex explosive charge, mounted on a rack of spigots that launched them all forward in a spread pattern shaped roughly like an oval. So named because the empty launch spigots, once fired, looked like the bare quills of a hedgehog. And here's the detail that made this weapon genuinely alien to a German U-boat crew. Unlike a depth charge, a Hedgehog bomb doesn't explode unless it physically hits something. No timer, no pressure trigger set for a certain depth. If all 24 bombs miss the submarine and just sink harmlessly past it into the deep dead silence, nothing happens. No shockwave, no warning at all that an attack even occurred. Now picture that from inside a German U-boat. For 2 years, every attack came with sound. The engine noise of the escort ship overhead, the splash of charges hitting the water, the mechanical click of the pistol arming, then the weight and the boom, whether it hit or not, because depth charges were built to detonate at a set depth regardless of what they struck. U-boat crews had built their entire survival strategy around hearing the attack coming and reading the sound of the explosion to judge how close it had been. The Hedgehog took all of that away. If it missed, there was nothing, no sound, no shockwave to reassure you that you'd dodged it. The silence itself became the terror because silence gave you no information at all about whether you were still being hunted. This is where the story gets genuinely strange because the weapon that would eventually terrify U-boat crews almost didn't survive its own side. Goodeve's team faced furious resistance from within the Royal Navy establishment, senior officers who didn't trust an untested contraption built by outsiders who preferred the depth charge because it was familiar and because, crucially, a depth charge attack that missed at least felt like something had happened. Sailors could see the shockwave, hear the noise, feel like they'd fought back. A weapon that could fire 24 bombs and produce nothing but silence felt, to some old guard commanders, like doing nothing at all. It took real institutional stubbornness from Goodeve's people to push the Hedgehog past the doubters and onto actual ships. By 1941 and into early 1942, Hedgehog launchers started appearing on Royal Navy escort vessels, including aboard HMS Westcott. But the early results were rough, and this matters because it shows the weapon's success wasn't instant magic, it was a slow grind. Initial kill rates were only around 5%, barely better than the depth charges the Hedgehog was supposed to replace. Crews weren't trained properly. Confidence in the device was low. Rolling North Atlantic swells frequently swamped the launcher on deck, throwing off aim. Some captains, frustrated, quietly went back to trusting depth charges whenever they got the choice. For a stretch of months, it genuinely looked like this brilliant idea might die from poor execution before it ever proved itself. But here's the thing. The physics behind the Hedgehog hadn't changed. The advantage was real, it just needed properly trained crews to unlock it. As gunnery teams got more practice, as tactics improved, and as better fire control procedures spread through the fleet, the kill rate began climbing steadily upward. And once the United States Navy adopted the design too, receiving it as a form of reverse lend-lease and putting it into service in late 1942, the number of escort ships carrying Hedgehogs multiplied fast across both the Atlantic and Pacific theaters. The real breakthrough, though, came from combining the Hedgehog with better information systems. Navy tacticians developed something called the Combat Information Center, a dedicated room aboard the ship where all incoming sonar and radar data got funneled and interpreted in real time, while the ship's captain stayed free on the bridge to actually fight the engagement. By 1944, this fusion of Hedgehog hardware with improved sonar, radar, and centralized tracking pushed accuracy to levels nobody had predicted 2 years earlier. Some records show 11 of the last 16 U-boat sinkings by US forces in one stretch of the war came from Hedgehog attacks, a staggering share for a weapon that had started out struggling to hit anything at all. Now picture that reversal from the German side of the periscope, because this is where the psychological horror really lands. A U-boat commander, trained for 2 straight years on the rhythm of depth charge attacks, the splash, the click, the boom, suddenly finds himself in an engagement where the escort ship above stays quiet, doesn't pass overhead, doesn't drop anything obvious at all. Then, without warning, the hull breaches. Water floods in at a rate approaching 400 gallons per minute through a hole just 3 or 4 inches wide, torn open by a projectile that made almost no detectable noise on its way down. There was no shockwave to feel, no splash pattern to judge distance by, nothing for a sonar operator listening on headphones to warn the crew that death was already in the water and sinking toward them. German training manuals simply hadn't prepared anyone for a weapon that killed in total silence. That gap in understanding was the whole point, and it's what made the Hedgehog such a quietly brilliant piece of British engineering. The Germans built the finest U-boats of the war, superb machines crewed by skilled, disciplined sailors. But their doctrine was built entirely around reading the sound signature of an attack to know when they were safe. The British didn't try to outbuild the U-boat. They didn't need a faster boat or a bigger gun. They simply removed the one piece of information German crews relied on most, the warning. And by the time German naval intelligence fully grasped what was happening, the weapon was already spreading across hundreds of Allied escort ships. The climax of this story isn't one single battle. It's the slow, mounting realization inside the German U-boat fleet that something fundamental had shifted, and that they no longer knew how to read the sea around them. Losses to the class of escort ships called destroyer escorts, purpose-built for anti-submarine warfare and almost always fitted with Hedgehogs, climbed sharply through 1943 and 1944. The overall Allied Hedgehog kill ratio settled at roughly 1 sinking for every 5 to 6 attacks, compared to that brutal 60-to-1 ratio for depth charges alone. That's not a small improvement. That's an order of magnitude leap in lethality, achieved not through bigger explosives or faster ships, but through a small, spiky steel frame and a fundamentally different philosophy of attack. German U-boat crews adapted where they could, diving deeper, running quieter, trying to break sonar contact before an escort could line up a forward shot. But you can't train around information you don't have. Every depth charge attack had at least given a U-boat crew feedback. Close, far, missed entirely. The Hedgehog gave nothing back except results. Either your boat was intact or it wasn't. That psychological weight, not knowing, attack after attack, whether the silence above you meant safety or meant a live weapon was already sinking toward your hull, war on crews across the entire U-boat fleet during the war's final brutal years, when German losses in the Atlantic climbed to catastrophic levels. In the decades since, the Hedgehog rarely gets the recognition of more famous World War II weapons. It doesn't have the drama of a dogfighting fighter plane or the scale of a battleship duel. It's a strange-looking rack of spikes that most people have never heard of. But its influence quietly outlasted the war itself. The principle of forward-firing, contact-fused anti-submarine weapons became the standard doctrine for decades afterward, shaping how navies around the world hunted submarines well into the Cold War. The core idea, attack while you can still see your target rather than after you've lost it, is still baked into anti-submarine warfare thinking today. So why does a story like this matter more than 80 years later? Because it's a reminder that the most decisive weapons in history aren't always the loudest or the most famous ones. Sometimes the deadliest thing you can build isn't a bigger explosion. It's taking away the one piece of information your enemy has always relied on to feel safe. The Wheezers and Dodgers didn't outgun the U-boat fleet. They outthought it. They looked at a problem everyone else had accepted as unsolvable and asked a simple, stubborn question: what if the enemy's whole survival strategy is built on an assumption we can just remove? That's not just a story about a submarine mortar. That's a lesson about how real breakthroughs happen, not from brute force, but from someone refusing to accept the rules everyone else thought were fixed. If you found this piece of hidden military history as fascinating as I did, let me know in the comments which weapon or story you want uncovered next. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you in the next one.